And now, so you can see the color coming. With the proper cooking time, it will get a nice brown color eventually. The moisture will evaporate. Just to show you, now these are high heat rubber handles. I could throw this in the oven, all right, and not worry about it. And that would be why you would cook it in the oven. I said earlier if it was a bigger batch and you can't do it on the stove, but also if you want to tend to other things, so I don't have to stir it all the time. And so what's going to happen is that's going to come out of the oven, and I'm going to add a little tomato product to get the color more. I'm going to add it to my stock pot, all right? Not all this tomato product. It is not a tomato sauce. It is a brown sauce. And the tomato just helps color it. So the recommended product is paste, tomato paste. But if you have puree or a tomato sauce, as this is perfectly fine. Okay? So I'm going to pull this out. It's not ready, but I'm pulling it out anyway. All right? That's just to show you how you can put it in the oven. And we can get this thing going. All right? And I'm going to just put it. It's okay that I'm rushing it, right? Okay. I'm just going to put this in the pot. Now you can see I have the fond. You can see I have the fond on the bottom of the frying pan. All right. Now that's going to be good fond. I'm going to deglaze with that. You could use wine and what have you. But in a stock, you want to keep it neutral. Later on, we'll flavor it with wine or whatever we want when we make a sauce. Right now, we're going to just do plain water for the deglaze. Deglaze means lift the fond up, because that's flavor. That is good flavor. But I mentioned to you about a little tomato product, okay, just to help color it. Maybe a little bit more tomato product than I would normally use because I didn't really get the proper browning technique. And I really want you to understand that these need to be browner, or more brown, I should say. Now, when you deglaze, it's important that the pan is hot because it's got to lift. So we'll put a little bit of that in there. And the ratio, this is probably one of the most important parts of preparing a stock, is the ratio of water to bones. The ratio of water to bones is roughly about 5-6 pounds of bones to a gallon of water. Sometimes even more. I say you can never have more bones. However, it's another thing we don't really measure. So I'm just going to cover the bones. Okay? Now that's probably good. You have to remember, see, this is why you can't really put something like this in a recipe, all right? Because it's technique. We don't know how long we're cooking this yet, maybe 12 hours. If I cook this 12 hours, I'm going to run out of water. It's going to evaporate, and I'm going to burn my pot. So you always want to keep about that level. I know I'm going to have evaporation, so I could start with more water. That was probably, this was 3 quarts or a little over 3/4 of a gallon of water. And this was about 4 pounds of bones. But nevertheless, it's by eye. So what's going to happen is as this evaporates and cooks very slowly so I could avoid the evaporation, also too much evaporation at once, also a very tall pot as opposed to a wide pot, because if you have a wide pot, then what happens is you have too much evaporation. Now this is my deglaze pan, okay? So I have to put this back on the heat, and it helps the dishwasher and the pot washer quite a bit because I'm essentially taking off this crust. And I'm taking off the crust and making that, see, I already have kind of a stock. looks like dirty dishwater, but actually it's a flavorful stock because it's back on the heat. The cold water lifted on the hot pan, helped lift that fond right off of there, and that's what you have. Okay, so that's good. All right, and I have this other thing coming up to a boil. Now, I want to put my aromatic herbs in there. But I really should, to do this correctly, I should really let this come to a boil, skim off any impurities, we happen to call it scum, that rises to the surface, and discard them, and then put in our aromatic vegetables. Just because they have a tendency to get in the way and you might skim them off. Not that big of a deal because you could just avoid them when you're skimming and whatnot. So I'm going to reach over here and get them because I'm not going to wait for this to come to a boil. And I'm going to just put them in there. Remember, this was my parsley, that's thyme. That's my celery. And that's my celery. There's parsley in there somewhere. That's my parsley. Okay, we got celery leaves, and we have thyme, and we had bay leaf in there also. Okay, so we bring that to a boil, and then I could skim that. And I could skim some fat as it comes to the surface too. The fat's going to protect it from breathing and boiling properly. Actually, we're going to turn it down to a simmer because, again, we don't want it to evaporate too quickly. And when you are done, you will end up with, now, if you have a very concentrated flavor, and a nice stock, you will end up with a brown stock, such as this I showed you before. Now, this has a little bit of fat on the top, okay? Fat always rises to the top. I could skim that off at any point in time, but there's no sense in, okay? We have a little scum bucket next to our this stock, because we're always skimming it, because then it becomes a nice, clean, stock. As a matter of fact, it's an important point here. It depends what your application or the utilization of the stock is, but you never want to. I'm going to put a little. I don't want to burn my pan, so I'm going to put a little in here. Okay. All right. And just so you could see when it's heated up what it looks like. Obviously, this is cold. This has a lot of body and consistency, and I'm just kind of cleaning up the top with all this fat where it's a different color. Okay, and we could get that out so we don't put that back into our stock. And so that's really how to make a stock. If we reviewed it, it would be a mirepoix, our aromatic vegetables of carrot, onion, celery. It would be our bouquet garni, which is our, most people, most chefs in modern day, it's all mirepoix. If we were to really be strict, it would be garlic, celery, thyme, bay leaf. So other aromatics. I don't have any garlic in here, but I will put garlic in there as this thing progresses, because a lot of people don't even put their vegetables in till towards the end anyway, because they don't need to cook 12 hours. Or the minimum cooking time for this is going to be 6 hours to extract the proper flavor. So we don't really need to put our vegetables in so early. However, I don't see the harm in it, and I like to minimize the stock production because it's otherwise you make a big thing out of it and it's a lot of effort. And I like to just be part of the kitchen flow where you just kind of feed the stock pot as you have products that should go in there. So now, as you can see, I have the stock is boiling. It's got good color. There is a little bit of scum. That's this foam. I could just take that off of there. All right, some fat, what have you. Try not to pick up my vegetables, but it doesn't matter now anyway. I'm straining this. This is cooked for 12 hours. This stock it's actually the same stock I showed you before. And now it's being refortified. So, but I wanted to show you what a finished product was. So the vegetables still look a little bit fresh. But what we're going to do is we strain it through a fine chinois, French for China cap, because this is the French version. It's a very fine mesh to take out all the impurities. Most people, most chefs, if they have a big batch, what they will do is they will strain it through a regular China cap, which has larger holes because it's easier to strain, and then strain that batch through the chinois. So they'll strain it twice. And so once you get it to kind of a pourable form, I could pick up this pot and I can pour it. Okay, so we're going to do that, make sure everything's stable and that my plastic's not burning. All right, so trying to get all the bones in there. Now, as I mentioned, there's still a lot of life in these bones, and it looks that way, I'm sure, in the camera, because the parsley's still green. You can almost tell that it's still firm. I'm bringing this down. I'm fortifying it, okay? This is not wasted. I know there's a lot of life in those bones and vegetables, and so I'm going to put it into my stock that I'm bringing down already and reducing to get that flavor. Now, this is a little plunger action. This is the way you strain. You can see it kind of come through. Otherwise, it kind of just drips slowly. See that? Stream is just slow. So, kind of plunge it, all right? And again, I'm not that concerned about getting it all. Work neat, okay? Goes right into the stock. So that's the lesson on stock production, and we'll move into sauce production, what to do with the stock once you have it made. Thank you very much.